Ann Thorne. I'm a tribal member at the Rincon Band of Luiseño Indians. And today I'm going to take you on a journey to learn about the difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes. And more importantly, how this pandemic has affected our people in a disproportionate rate. We're going to learn where it came from and, more importantly, how we can overcome it. So join me on this journey to health and wellness. For 23,000 years, California Indigenous people thrived in harmony with nature, migrating every 2 months to forage and hunt. Their diet rich in acorns sustained them through their journey from the mountains to the oceans. But with the arrival of the colonies, their traditional ways were prohibited. The Indian Removal Act in the mid-1800s tore families apart and disrupted their customs. Spiritual practices, traditional ways of living, and dietary customs that nurtured communities for generations were suppressed. The beginning of reservations ushered in extreme poverty, forcing tribes to rely on government rations, canned meat, lard, sugar, and processed foods. This shift in diet led to a new form of devastation. Type 2 diabetes emerged as a serious threat, endangering the well-being of the native population. In a world where the connection to our land is often lost, Megan Baldi stands out as a keeper of the land. Embracing her Indigenous roots, she has tapped into the ancient wisdom of utilizing food for healing and preservation.
I grew up with a lot of food insecurity. I grew up in, a native household that my parents were not the best growing up. And so we'd get a lot of commodity foods that were highly processed. They were in a box. A lot of them were in a white can or a white box. And that's how we grew up and ate. I remember being 8 years old and my dad taking me into the kitchen and being like, "You're not going to let your brothers and sisters go hungry again." And he started teaching me, I started peeling potatoes and making fried potatoes. And that was the way that I started to become a cook. And now I see my whole community as people that I need to feed. I gather acorns to this day. I will mill them up, I will leach them, and then I'll make some soup out of them, holding on through that traditional way still. Especially acorns, they have properties within them that regulate the sugars in your digestive system. So breaking down that sugar that's foreign to us. And that's how it combats these things, not just diabetes, but we have heart disease. We have obesity rates that are higher than other communities or other minority demographics. We have a lot of disparities within our communities. And a lot of that is because we're not eating the foods that our body has genetically known since the beginning of time. I think people don't really realize it in the outside world, that how connected we are to the land, how connected we are to the food. We're physically and genetically connected to it. Our body desires that food.
The distinction between type 1 and type 2 diabetes remains a mystery to many. Type 1 diabetes is a genetic disorder, much like inheriting traits such as height or eye color. On the other hand, type 2 diabetes creeps in gradually, heavily influenced by lifestyle decisions like diet and exercise. Misty Faulkner is a registered dietitian and a Native American woman. She works with tribal members to re-educate and assist them finding ways to overcome type 2 diabetes.
Nutrition is the most important role in treating and managing diabetes. The high carb intake is definitely not going well for us. It's a difficult thing to give up sugar, and we don't really think of sugar as addicting because we don't think of it as some other type of drug. We think, oh, it's just in food. But the problem is most people aren't connected to food the way that we were originally. Originally, when we were hunter-gatherers, we were connected to our food. We knew what seasons, what foods to pick. Now we've got tons of processed foods. It has a lot of additives. A lot of different things are put into it to make us crave these foods, want more of these foods. And so we're kind of ignoring our natural hunger cues and overeating and eating more of these sugary type foods. People can lose, their arms, their legs is very common. Heart disease, it can damage the heart. It can also damage the brain. We're starting to understand a little bit more about dementia and sugar intake. It can damage, the vessels and veins in the body. It can also interfere with your reproductive system, kidneys, liver, and those organs, they rely on oxygen. And when your blood sugar is high, that blood becomes really thick, almost like syrup. And so it can't reach those organs. And so you're depriving that. Think of it as your brain is just cut off from having oxygen. It needs oxygen. So when your blood sugar is high, you're not able to think properly. You're not able to make life decisions when your blood sugar is high. There's no special diet if you have diabetes. I teach the plate method, which is half your plate non-starchy vegetables. The other quarter of the plate is dedicated to protein, and then another quarter for carbs if you choose to have them. I really would like to see nutrition at the forefront, maybe even teaching it in schools again. We used to have home ec, get your kids in the kitchen cooking. If you really want to live healthy until the day that you pass away, then you have to really make those changes.
Here we are at the Old Town Graveyard, where a Native American rests alongside a Western pioneer. It's fascinating to note that Indigenous ancestors who followed their traditional diet lived long and healthy lives, sometimes over 100 years, while the settlers who brought a European diet didn't live as long. Sean Sherman is a master of Indigenous cuisine. He shows us the profound impact of food on our lives, working exclusively with pre-colonial ingredients. He enlightens society about the essence of reverting to our roots for ultimate health and wellness.
Our work was creating a philosophy that basically removed a lot of colonial ingredients to highlight what are true North American foods, which are indigenous foods. So we took away things that European colonizers brought over, primarily wheat flour, cane sugar, dairy products, beef, pork, and chicken. And so everything we've been doing has really been focused on health. It's been focused on a deeper understanding of our indigenous food system. And it's just a really ideal diet because a lot of this work is trying to understand a lot of the health implications that have been brought upon us. So for myself, growing up on Pine Ridge Reservation and utilizing the commodity food program a lot growing up and seeing what that's done to our communities of having this access that just isn't very healthy for us, because it's got a lot of preserved vegetables and high sodium, a lot of preserved fruits and high corn syrups. And there's just a lot of empty carbs across the board with things like powdered milk and government cheese and all of these grains, all these white grains that just aren't good for us, It's a really important opportunity to rethink the way we eat, to think about who we're purchasing food from and utilizing indigenous foods, especially in kind of a healthy philosophy like we're doing. We've had people that have come into the restaurant and tested their blood levels before eating at Awamni and after and seeing very little spike, with the foods, even though they're having a full meal. Because everything is so low glycemic because of the style of cooking that we do, of just using a lot of whole vegetables, a lot of whole grains, and, just keeping foods really, really simple with that, not adding a whole bunch of extra flour and butter and all these things to it. I think it's good for everybody to think about the land that they're standing on, thinking about the history of the land that they're standing on, thinking about some of the privileges that some of their family might have passed down to them with land wealth and where that wealth comes from originally, And it's good to think about how we think about eating in North America, because we should be eating very regional and very seasonal. And if we're eating indigenous, then that's just a part of it, because there's so much diversity across North America, and there's so much diversity in the tribes out there, but non-indigenous people should just realize the amazing diversity that they're sitting on. So I just think it's really important that we do consider different ways of healthy eating and, again, where we're purchasing foods and, creating better philosophies for our own health and nutrition.
Within the tribal community is a member, Dawn Whitley, whose spirit radiates resilience, discipline, and the mark of a survivor in the battle against type 2 diabetes.
I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. My insulin was never crazy scary. I was lucky, but it was enough to put me on daily metformin. And I was getting healthier, and then the pandemic hit, and I got really healthy. So I started walking, and I actually started what is intermittent fasting. That helps people who are diabetic extremely well, if they can do it. It's eating once a day. And I started a walking journey. My son had just had back surgery, and he started walking religiously. So I joined him during COVID. Then in mid-2020, I got my A1C checked, and my numbers were so low that I was no longer even pre-diabetic. I was non-diabetic. And fast forward to today, I'm diabetes-free in 2024. So it's been almost 4 years that I'm off metformin and diabetes-free. I did lose 65 pounds, and I walk religiously. I try to walk 3 miles a day. I'm proud. I'm a success story because it's not easy. You know, sugar's not good for anybody, especially refined white sugar. It's been a learning experience for sure, but I'm super happy where I am. Yeah.
Now that our journey has come to an end in learning about type 2 diabetes, it's evident that the first people of this land hold the knowledge to health and wellness. And for us, it just means a few lifestyle changes, better food, more exercise, and that will bring us health and wellness, but not only for us, but for future generations.